A few days ago, I took my first trip to California's Great America's Winterfest event, and I walked away with some mixed thoughts. So today, I'm essentially going to review the Winterfest event and ultimately answer the question, is it even worth visiting? Now, I want to compile a list of the good, the bad, and the ugly, but before doing so, I want to give some general information in regard to the event. First things first, this event runs from about Black Friday to the end of December. The park is open from 4 to 10 p.m. and tickets are slightly cheaper than your average day. The rides offered during this event is pretty much all the major coasters and a lot of the major flat rides. From what I saw, Mass Effect the Dark Ride was one of the more major rides that didn't operate during Winterfest. In addition to the rides, there are a bunch of photo ops and other neat things that are specific to the Winterfest event. When no discounts are going on, tickets appear to be about $33 US. Considering that price and considering what's available, that's a decent price. I've seen much worse. So ultimately, what does this event do well? Well, let's go to the good. Number 1, the lights and the overall Christmas atmosphere. I gotta give Great America credit here. The lights look fantastic. The vast majority of the trees in the park are covered with lights, and the front entrance looks great as ever. Admittedly, some ride queues are pretty dark, like when you're in line for Gold Striker or Grizzly or Flight Deck, some of those major rides. When you get into the queue, there are no Christmas lights back there, so it feels kind of like a weird contrast. It's clear this park isn't usually open at night because if they were, they'd have a lot more lights back there. If there'd be one thing I would change about the lighting of Great America at Winterfest, it would probably be to brighten up some of those queues. In addition to all the normal trees that they stream with lights, there is a big Christmas tree put right behind the carousel near the front of the park. It's quite big and it looks wonderful as well. Throw in the Christmas music and you've got a great atmosphere. Unfortunately though, my experience was not all positive. So, the bad. Number 1, crowd levels. To be clear, I'm not against a park being busy necessarily. I love the Disneyland Resort and that place is always packed. From what I understand, if you go later in the Winterfest season, crowds should be lighter. The week right before New Year's is the busiest time. Little did we know. That being said, there's busy and then there's, well, packed. And that's what it was on our visit. The lines for the major coasters were at least 90 minutes long and were spilling out onto the midway. It was kind of ridiculous. I'm not necessarily faulting the park for the crowd levels, but I will fault them for the ugly. Number 1, ride availability. To be clear, all the rides that California's Great America said would be open were at one point or another open from what I saw. So let me take you through a sequence we experienced while we were at Great America. So, okay, we get in line for Grizzly and it's taken a long time and then we find out that there's a technical issue. Okay, after some time, we leave the queue and head over towards Railblazer. On our way there, we notice that Demon is temporarily shut down and we notice Railblazer is temporarily shut down. Not great. So we head over to Gold Striker. While we're in line there, that ride temporarily closes down for about 10 minutes before restarting. We did eventually get on it, but my point being is that within an hour period of time, we saw 4 separate major coasters closed. Hear what I'm trying to say here. I'm not saying they were just closing rides just to close them, or they didn't have an excuse. I do believe that there were actually technical issues. It's just not a good look to have that many rides close on a holiday event in that amount of time. Okay, enough negativity for now. Let's give one more positive, the good. Number 2, the 1-2 punch. This is of course referring to the 2 roller coasters, Railblazer the RMC Raptor and Gold Striker the GCI Wooden Coaster. We got to get on both of these and they are sensational coasters. If I recorded my top 10 coasters list today, there's an outside shot that Gold Striker sneaks back in. It was better than it was in June of 2021. This coaster has always felt out of control, and when you ride in the back row at night with not too much lighting, it definitely feels even more crazy. The issue with Gold Striker has never been the layout, it's been the smoothness, and luckily that has been vastly improved. Still not the smoothest coaster out there, but much, much better. And then you have one of the craziest roller coasters ever built, Railblazer. I forgot how good a back row ride on this coaster really is. The twisted airtime hill is great, but the 2 drops try to launch you into space in the back seat. I agree that this coaster is too short, but what it does in that tiny footprint and those 1,800 feet of track is incredible. I'd ride this thing all day. Well, actually, maybe not. Maybe it's a little too crazy for that. Regardless, such an incredible coaster. Even though it was a frustrating night, getting on Railblazer made it a little bit worth it. That's how good it is. Let's go back to the bad now for the upcharge pricing. Something I haven't mentioned until now is the exclusive Winterfest activities that are upcharge attractions. You have 2. Number 1 is ice skating. If you want to go ice skating in front of the carousel, it's going to cost you $20. Now, I don't know how long the session is, but I can imagine it's not that lengthy. That's not all though. If you want to decorate cookies, it's going to run you $20.99. That seems ridiculous to me. I'm sorry, it just does. Maybe if you're a season pass holder or you have little kids, I understand it, but otherwise, I just can't justify spending that much money on cookie decorating in my opinion. But, you know, theme park prices are what they are. Okay, one more for the ugly. Ugly number 2, operations. We talked about ride availability a little bit ago, and while that is indeed tied into the operations item, I think, I'm also referring to ride dispatches. Now, not all dispatches were bad. Railblazer and Flight Deck were some of the good ones. Psycho Mouse, the Arrow Wild Mouse coaster, was okay. I think the capacity could have been slightly better on that if they were running more trains at a time. That being said, Psycho Mouse was not the biggest offender for operations. That honor goes to Grizzly. On normal days, this coaster usually opens a few hours after the park opens. Not sure exactly why, but that's a problem to begin with. But number 2, the dispatches on this were painfully slow. Once I started really timing it, they were on the shorter side, 3.5 minutes, and on the longer side, closer to 5 minutes. This ride has always had slow dispatches, but I don't remember it being that bad. I really don't know what was going on that particular night. The bad operations, paired with ride closures, paired with those crowds, led us to only riding 3 rides in 6 hours, which is an unfortunate thing that happened, but, you know, you live with it. I think the bottom line is that we got CJ Winterfest on a bad night. High crowd levels, rides being closed time to time, operations not being great. It combined for an overall just okay night, when it could have been a lot better. So, do I recommend visiting California's Great America's Winterfest? I think if you go earlier in the season, I still recommend it, even with the bad luck we had. However, I'm going to warn you, given my one experience with California's Great America's Winterfest, expect crowds. And if you expect crowds and then there aren't as many, you'll be happily surprised. If you go in thinking there's going to be low crowds, like we did, you might be a little unprepared. So go in with the right expectations and hopefully you'll have much better luck than we did.